Antarctica has a blood waterfall. Yeah, this is my first video, and if you haven't closed it yet, I know, it sucks. Anyway, this video is meant for entertainment and educational purposes, so don't take it too seriously. When you think of a place that's empty, freezing, completely deserted, and that nobody gives a crap about, you're probably thinking about your love life. But actually, it's just Antarctica, a place that was cut off from the rest of the world in 1959 and used as an open-air lab for penguin breeding experiments, but over the years, somehow became one of the most exclusive destinations on Earth. I've always been intrigued by how Antarctica is so utterly off-limits that people started coming up with conspiracy theories that are, to say the least, pretty interesting. So, to make this video, I decided to do some research. And by that, I mean I watched every single episode of Frozen Planet at 1.5 times speed. I don't have that much free time. And all that while eating a popsicle. Now, you must be thinking that you can't buy a plane ticket to Antarctica because it's cold and really far away, which is partly true, but not because access is actually restricted. I mean, if that were the whole story, there are a few towns in Canada that would qualify too. The real reason is the Antarctic Treaty, which established Antarctica as a demilitarized zone dedicated entirely to research and environmental protection. To really get into this, we need to go back 67 years and talk about the treaty that was signed. And right after that, we'll get to the actually interesting part that probably made you click on this video in the first place: the conspiracies. So, let's start. The Antarctic Treaty mandates that nobody can own any part of the continent, and military activity is strictly prohibited, which is actually a pretty remarkable geopolitical achievement, considering that the US and the Soviet Union signed it at the exact same time they were aiming 20,000 nuclear warheads at each other's capitals. Today, there are over 70 research stations operated by 29 countries, and the summer population is only around 4,000 people. This means that an entire continent, roughly the size of the United States and Mexico combined, has a lower population density than a single IKEA on a Saturday afternoon. Officially, you can't just sail down there and set up camp, because the international community requires a permit, guaranteeing that only vetted scientists are allowed on the ice. Unless you are Mr. Beast. Antarctica is the coldest, driest, and windiest continent, and it holds the record for the lowest natural temperature ever recorded. Average winter temperatures along the coast sit around negative 70 degrees Fahrenheit, which is cold enough to solidify diesel fuel and stop your engine. The interior is a high-altitude ice plateau with effectively zero precipitation, which makes it the world's largest desert. Yeah, I know it sounds confusing, but it is a desert. Deserts are defined by rainfall rather than sand. The winds can exceed 180 miles per hour, which is fast enough to blow away your tent, your equipment, and any confidence you had in your life choices. With no native timber, edible vegetation, or large animals, surviving for more than a few hours means packing food, fuel, and shelter. It's an environment where you face months of total darkness, rely entirely on rations, sleep in cramped institutional housing, and see the exact same 20 faces for months on end. That really reminds me of my 20s. Pretty bleak. Many people say Antarctica is the one place they don't want you to visit, which is technically true, because the penguins have negotiated one of the strongest unions on Earth, and frankly, I respect that. The problem is that once you spend about 5 minutes online searching for why, you stop hearing about glaciers and start hearing about ancient aliens, Nazi bases, underwater monsters, and an entrance to the center of the Earth that's apparently hidden inside a cave with a sign saying, "No trespassing." I couldn't even successfully bring a full-size bottle of shampoo through airport security last month, so the idea that I'd be the guy sneaking into a secret underground civilization feels pretty optimistic. But using an advanced method, I could find a lot of information about those conspiracies. Organism 46b. This theory emerged from claims that Russian scientists drilling into Lake Vostok, a subglacial lake buried under 4 kilometers of ice, discovered a giant squid-like creature with the ability to paralyze prey from 100 feet away and shapeshift its own body, which the researchers supposedly named Organism 46b, and then apparently decided not to publish in any journal, but instead leaked to a conspiracy blog. And you might be wondering why they chose a name that sounds like a spreadsheet column instead of something cool like Ice Kraken. And that's a great question. The real Lake Vostok is indeed a massive freshwater lake under the ice, and Russian scientists did complete a drilling project there in 2012 after 20 years of ice core extraction. But the only organisms found were microscopic extremophiles, meaning bacteria that can live in extreme conditions. Not a kraken that can read your thoughts. I tried digging up more information about it, but then I found a post claiming that the water in the lake itself is a sentient organism that can learn and copy people just by touch. Now I know how Netflix finds ideas for its shows. Ancient pyramids. Every few months, someone posts satellite images showing what appears to be a perfectly shaped pyramid sticking out of the Antarctic ice, followed by approximately 80,000 comments saying, "Well, explain that." And that's a great question. The explanation is that mountains exist. More specifically, Antarctica has exposed mountain peaks called nunataks, where the surrounding glaciers leave only the upper portions visible. Depending on lighting conditions, shadows, snow cover, and camera angle, a naturally eroded mountain can appear remarkably symmetrical. Human brains are also pretty good at finding patterns where none exist. We see faces in clouds, animals in toast, and civilizations in triangles. Now, if aliens had traveled across the galaxy, survived interstellar radiation, mastered faster-than-light travel, and then decided that the best architectural style was pyramids, that would admittedly be a fascinating decision. Hollow Earth. According to Hollow Earth theories, the poles contain gigantic openings leading to an enormous civilization beneath the Earth's surface, usually called Agartha, where advanced beings live in harmony. Which brings us back to Admiral Richard E. Byrd and Operation High Jump. The U.S. Navy sent a large armada to the South Pole, supposedly just to test equipment in cold conditions. But according to Admiral Byrd's secret diary, he didn't just test equipment, he accidentally flew his plane straight into a massive hole at the pole, entering the inner Earth realm of Agartha. Here, he supposedly met a master race of highly evolved beings, living in a lush, tropical subterranean paradise, lit by an internal sun, who told him that humanity needed to stop using nuclear weapons. By the way, some writers believe that subsurface kingdoms might have been a refuge for survivors from Atlantis, Flat Earth. Unlike the previous theories, Flat Earth doesn't simply add another mystery underneath Antarctica. It makes Antarctica the mystery. According to Flat Earth models, Antarctica isn't a continent surrounding the South Pole. Instead, it's an enormous ring of ice surrounding the edge of the world, preventing the oceans from spilling into whatever comes after Australia. Whereas globe believers look at a boat disappearing over the horizon and think, yeah, that's the curvature of the Earth. Flat Earthers look at the exact same boat and think, the government is turning the rendering distance down to save memory. Fun fact, in December 2024, a mixed group of Flat Earthers and Globe Earthers traveled to Union Glacier in Antarctica as part of something called the Final Experiment. The goal was to observe the midnight sun, because, according to the most common Flat Earth model, the sun should not remain visible there for 24 hours. Unfortunately for them, it did. They live-streamed the whole thing, and prominent Flat Earth YouTuber Geran Campanella publicly admitted that he had been wrong about the phenomenon. At $31,495 per ticket, it may have been the most expensive 5th grade science lesson ever organized. But frankly, regardless of whether you think there are alien pyramids or secret bases under the ice, the actual reality of the Antarctic Treaty is a pretty rare example of humanity just doing the right thing. Since 1959, the entire international community has managed to look at a massive, untouched landmass and agree to just leave it completely alone. No military testing, no claiming territory, no drilling for resources. Just a preserved environment dedicated to peaceful scientific research so we can understand the history of our planet. The good news is that we are already melting it as fast as humanly possible, meaning that in about 40 years, we won't need a drill to find the squid.